my whiskey friends, welcome again to my basement here in Belgium for another one of Mark's Whiskey Ramblings. And since St. Patrick's Day is almost upon us, I thought it was suitable to discuss Bushmills Distillery. Bushmills is, of course, a distillery in Ireland. It's an Irish whiskey. And they claim to be the oldest licensed distillery in the world. They even put it on all their bottles. Even the new range, they blow it in the glass. The date of 1608. 1608 is the date in which Bushmills claims to have gotten its license. That is not entirely true. How shall I put this? From medieval times until the 18th, early 19th century, you probably know this, farmers, they had to use the remainders of their crops, of their barley and their oats, to distill whiskey, because otherwise they would have to save it in a very damp climate, so it would go moldy or even rot, and then they would lose money. So instead of keeping the barley in a barn, they would simply distill it and create Irish whiskey, which was a good idea, because whiskey was something that you could keep forever, and even your neighbours were willing and able to pay a little for that drink. So that's what they did. And by the 18th century, by the 17th century actually, whiskey had already become a commodity. People were distilling it, people were drinking it. So the government was being faced with a tough choice, because on the one hand they wanted to control distillation and consumption of whiskey, because too much whiskey would result in riots, in an increase in drunkenness and violence. The populace would get a tad unruly, while on the other hand, not enough whiskey would mean less money in the government's coffers, less money for the budget for the government. So that was a tough choice. But eventually they chose to control the consumption and the distillation of whiskey by offering licenses. Now the nobles and the high lords and the noblery in London and Parliament, they thought the Scottish Highlanders and also the Gaels from Ireland were savages, they were rebellious, they were drinking whiskey all the time, so they wanted to control that, and they came up with this idea of selling monopolies. So they gave a monopoly in a certain branch of government, a certain branch of industry, to people who were willing to pay a big amount of money for that, a large amount of money, or you could call it a stipend, or they would have to promise high commissions to the crown to get that monopoly. And that's how licenses to distill whiskey were sold at the end of the 16th, early 17th century in Ireland as well. And the first two grants that were, the first two licenses to distill whiskey that were sold in Ireland, that was indeed in 1608. And they were sold to two men. Charles Waterhouse from Munster was the first one. And then later in the year, a Thomas Phillips got a license. He got a distillery running in the county of Antrim, and it's that county where you can find the Bushmills Distillery today, and that is why they refer to this 1608 license as theirs, while it is not entirely accurate, of course, because Bushmills was not formally registered until almost 200 years later in 1794. But what the hell? Anyway, the range of Bushmills, the core range, consists of not only blends but also single malts. In the blends category, there is the original, the Black Bush, and the 1608, which was released in 2008 to celebrate 400 years of Bushmills Distillery. It's a very special blend. It's rather expensive, but it's very good. In the single malts, however, they have the 10-year-old, which is rather straightforward but very pleasant dram as an aperitif. They also have the 16-year-old triple, which is finished in port pipes. But their pièce de résistance is this 21-year-old rare whiskey, which is a vatting of Bushmills that was matured in bourbon casks and Oloroso casks, and then those two were put together in Madeira casks. So the Spanish wine Madeira for another 2 years before becoming this wonderful nectar, the Bushmills 21-year-old. That's the one we're going to try right now. I was thinking about using the Bushmills glass, but that would be silly, because this is not really the kind of glass you want to use if you want to discover a whiskey. This is what you need, a Glencairn, because this is it's not tulip formed. So this is good to have a Bushmills with even a cube of ice. even a cube of ice, just to enjoy some whiskey on a sunny terrace while the kids are playing in the garden. But if you really want to discover a whiskey, what you want to use is this type of glass that narrows a bit towards the top to allow you to concentrate all the aromas and to allow you to savor them as they should. So like I said, 19-year-old in bourbon in Oloroso, and then finished for another 2 years in Madeira casks. And the Madeira is obvious on the nose immediately. It is very soft and smooth. It's a delicious wave of malty and winey, but not winey. Winey is not the good word to use here, because winey means, vinous means over the top, while this is not over the top at all. This is really luscious, velvety, very, very soft and smooth. There's malt elements, the toffee is there. I get some raspberry and apricots, you know, and cream, and this is rather very, very enticing. I like it already. Very smooth and delicious. Mm. Mm. It's juicy. Again, rather fruity as well. You get the apricots and some red currants, some raspberries, some cherries, even some raisins. There's some glazed almonds in there, some marzipan. It's really succulent. It's this is good. This is soft and sweet, and some roasted nuts as well. This is very good. And the finish, it fades very gently. It's like embers of fire that are dying, you know. It lingers a bit and it fades rather gently, very gently indeed. This is good stuff. Well, it should be, because it's rather expensive stuff as well. You will not be able to get this under £100 or under 120 euros at least. So it should be nice. There's some ginger in the aftertaste. There's even a touch of smoke in there, and that's probably the oak speaking, because obviously Bushmills does not use any kind of peat whatsoever. I'm told they have a very nice visitor centre, which attracts more than 100,000 visitors per year. So whenever you get to the County and Trim, it's a bit north of Londonderry, in Northern Ireland there, go and visit it. I'm told it's very nice and it's very beautifully maintained. They even have their own bottling plant on site. So there's been some improvements since Diageo took over the Bushmills operation. So if ever you are out there, make sure you go and visit it. At least that's what I will do, because I've never been there myself. And Bushmills is one of the distilleries on my wish list to go and visit. But this Bushmills 21-year-old is a very, very balanced and a very, very refined dram. It's the kind of dram that you will want to sip with good friends after dinner in front of an open fire. That's the kind of idea I get with this sweet and succulent and delicious, smooth Irish whiskey. Most Irish whiskies are smooth because they are triple distilled, of course, but this 21-year-old, this is something different. This is something else. Something to enjoy, which I plan to do, and I hope you will do the same. I wish you a very happy St. Patrick's Day, and until we meet again for our next whiskey rambling in Belgium, and I'll see you then. May the malt be with you. Bye-bye.